Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to our Daily Tech Podcast, where we cover every topic imaginable and also look at how technology is transforming every industry, as well as our lifestyle. On this show, we have everything from tech startup founders sharing their story to CEOs and leaders at tech behemoths at IBM, Adobe, Microsoft and co. But as you can imagine, writing, producing and hosting a daily tech podcast takes up a fair amount of my time. So I wanted to ask you one tiny favour. And all that is whatever platform you're listening to now, whether it be Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, would you mind leaving a rating and a review? Especially on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, because I know, like all of you, I'm ruled by some pesky algorithm, and unless there's enough ratings, unless there's enough reviews, they won't send more listeners to our show. So the only reason I ask this is because I think it helps build our community, bring in more listeners, and ultimately enables us to share more stories and our insights together and learn from each other. And in return, wherever I go in the world, I'm going to give you a heads up, and there's an open invitation to grab a coffee or a cold beer with me. Sound like a deal? Cool. On with today's show. Today I want to talk about how advanced Net Promoter Score analytics is shaping the future of product management. And equally, how to retain customer loyalty and engagement in a time where customers are demanding insanely great products, but at the right price. So I have the perfect guest to talk about this subject today, and his name is Todd Olson. Todd is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Pendo, which is a product experience platform that helps product teams create software that customers love. He's also a 3-time entrepreneur that has experienced the highs and the lows of running fast-growth technology companies, and his journey began as a proficient coder at age just 14. But I don't want to reveal any spoilers just yet, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to North Carolina so we can speak with Todd Olson, CEO and founder of Pendo. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Todd. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me on. So my name is Todd Olson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pendo. Pendo is a software as a service solution that helps companies create products that their users love. And we do that by combining the ability to understand how your users use that product with the ability to then guide and educate users and how to get more value out of it.
Now, before we talk about what you do, you've got an amazing backstory that would be kind of criminal for me not to explore. So, as a 3-time entrepreneur, you've experienced the highs and the lows of running a fast-growth technology company, and also think it would be valuable to people listening, especially if they're on their own tech startup journey at various stages of that. So can you tell me a little bit more about your story that began when you were a proficient coder at age just 14? You spent your teens working on as a database designer and a software architect for MBNA Bank in Delaware, and going on to raise $17 million in an institutional capital and hiring 65 people, only to shut down when funding dried up during the dot-com era. I mean, it's a fantastic story, isn't it?
Well, it was definitely an interesting ride. So I learned a lot and started coding at a very early age, mostly self-taught. Started working at a bank of all places, again, at the age of 14. And, I was so young that, one, I couldn't drive there after school. And so they just sent a shuttle over to pick me up, to bring me over. And, it was just an amazing experience learning how in the professional world, not just learning the craft of software development, but also learning, politics and dealing with, arguably bureaucracy at the time. I think even at that early age, one of the things that I took away was a strong customer first attitude. I made sure that I treated everyone that I created, essentially, I was writing essentially reports. So I was, using databases and, writing, large scale, essentially what they call now data warehousing and ETL. We were basically doing that back in the late 80s, early 90s. And, learn a lot again by taking care of your customers. And I knew that if I took care of my customers, good things would happen. And then, went on to university. And then after graduating, or I guess in my senior year of graduating, started my first company, which, as you said, raised some venture capital, grew to 65, 70 people, and then we got hit with the whole .com boom, and it was it was a really tough situation. We actually almost had an exit, almost sold the company. We're actually so close that the acquirer had bridged us to the acquisition, only for it ultimately not to occur. So it was a wild periods of up and downs, because you go from, I was 22, maybe 23, going from an exit where I would have possibly been in a situation where I wouldn't have to work again at 22, to going from that to going to zero, all within a period of, say, months, was a roller coaster of emotions. I think I really discovered alcohol for the first time. And, I had to lay off. I think I had to lay off 35 people in a single day. And at that time, I had never done anything like that. So I decided doing it one by one would be the most personal and the right way to do it. Well, let me just tell you, that's a really bad idea. It's not necessarily, is it my fault? Yeah. As a leader, I took full responsibility for the situation we put it in, but still, doing it one by one was basically brutal on myself and emotionally. So, learned a lot. I think that the big thing is, going from a technologist, someone who, my sole responsibility was, I tell a computer essentially what to do and it does it and I can celebrate, to having to build teams and inspire teams and lead teams and where your success is no longer really based on your ability to be an individual contributor, but to inspire and lead. It's a learned a lot through that transition, and frankly, I think that a lot of that early learnings is what's kind of helped me be successful later in my career.
And you mentioned the .com era there. I suspect at the beginning of this year there were quite a few cryptocurrency investors that were convinced they were going to be retiring this year, but it's not quite panned out that way for them, has it?
Yeah, look, luck certainly has a lot to do with success in business, and I can argue that I think Pendo's success is, some of it is just market timing and luck. But I've never been one that believes in the whole get rich quick scheme, and I think hard work, building something of value, building a great culture with great people, I think those are ultimately the winning combinations. If you have that, plus a little bit of luck sprinkled in, that's when you really get success. But it's kind of how I always viewed it.
Absolutely, that's certainly the secret sauce. But if there are any tech leaders or startup founders listening to us today, what are the biggest lessons you've learned in your time that you could pass on to them?
I think the biggest lesson that I've learned, at least, and I think that maybe it's not as interesting to leaders today because I think a lot of it's common knowledge, but I think this whole product market fit, searching for product market fit, not scaling sales too early was part of my biggest lessons I learned early on. It's natural when you're starting something to kind of want to get out there in market and selling it really, really fast. When you build something, you want to get it out there. But I think the thing I learned is that if I myself couldn't sell something, you can't hire someone to do it for you, right? So I think this whole notion of iterating on, with customers, trying to find that product market fit where someone's willing to pay for something that you're building and doing it literally as a founding team and not scaling too quickly is one of the biggest lessons I've learned. And then the other big lesson, of course, is just around people, and how important your ability to hire really well matters. And I think a lot of people say they hire well, or they no one's going to go around and say, oh, we hire poorly, or we don't hire great people. But I think a lot of people don't have the discipline to say no and be really choosy. And hiring well isn't just hiring smart people. it's finding a person that's a great fit for your company at that time. Because there's going to be people that are great fits for your company, say a year from now or 2 years from now, that may not be a good fit for you right now. Or maybe they're a fit for a year ago and they're not fit for you now. I think having the discipline to say, is this exactly what we need right now, is really, really, really hard.
So as for Pendo, I mean, you guys combine product analytics and qualitative feedback to help product teams deliver software that users actually love. I mean, can you offer an overview, though, of what kind of problems you solve for your customers, and also what makes you unique and stand out from the crowd of all those other solutions out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I go back to the founding at Pendo, Pendo was founded and created, or I should say conceived, out of my pain I experienced in my prior role. So I essentially endured this pain, and then I created Pendo to address it and solve it. So, in some ways, Pendo has always been just something that's been scratching an itch I've had for a really long time. And the pain was actually pretty simple. It's when you've got a large product, tons of features, lots of customers, how do you, one, understand what people are doing in it to help measure the effectiveness of your decision making around things you build? For example, I'm a product guy. We're making decisions all day long about what we're building, how to rank order those things. How do we know we're making the right decision? How do we know that we're actually building the right things? I think all too often, I see people spend lots of times building things that they get delivered and they never get used by customers. To me, that's just a shame, right? And all this work goes into building and designing and testing, and then something gets delivered and doesn't get used. I mean, it's waste. And so that's always been a huge frustration for me. So I want to get really good data to make sure that we're actually not wasting our precious engineering resources and capacity. And two, I wanted to, if we discover that people aren't using something, have some tools in place to educate and get them more engaged. What I found is that I would do calls with customers and I'd say, hey, I noticed you aren't using this thing in our product. And they say, I didn't even know you shipped that thing. When did you ship it? It's like, oh, we shipped it a month ago, and we had a webinar and we sent some emails. And he's like, oh, I sorry, I didn't go to your webinar. And I get a lot of emails from your company. I must have missed that one, right? So in 2018, so much change is happening. Like all of us are consuming lots of software applications. It's hard when we, for us to keep track of all the new features and all the new software applications we're using, right? And so, Pendo, we have our solution helps you, one, have a really deep understanding of what people are doing. Two, complement that with the ability to communicate with them in app, show them what's new. If they have trouble doing something, walk them through it and get them to a successful outcome. Maybe, subtle reminders and nudges on other things that they could be taking advantage of if they're not. I mean, the ultimate value of Pendo, though, is making sure that consumers get really good value out of the software they use. And if you step back, that's kind of the dream or the mission here. It's I love software. I've been working in software, as you said, since 14. I want to make sure that the software we build is actually helping society, and we're getting value out of it. It's not waste, right? And it's kind of the ultimate vision of Pendo.
Now, you did mention a few moments ago that Pendo was the result of that itch that you just kept scratching there. But if you do look back and join up the dots, much of what we do now is shaped by our past experiences. So what was the inspiration for Pendo, would you say?
Yeah, I think the primary inspiration was just my prior experience. So I was a head of product at a software as a service company called Rally Software. And we were building internal tools to do this. And, I was in a meeting, and I'll never forget the meeting where I said, boy, it's really good to know which customers were doing this, and this. And, a bunch of engineers kind of came back to me and said, oh, Todd, that's going to take at least 30 to 60 days to get you that answer. I'm like, wow, like a month to 2 months just to get a single answer. And then I was like, okay, screw this. I'm going to go out and hire a data scientist. I hear these data scientists are all the rage. And maybe if I hire a data scientist, this person will get me all the answers as soon as I need them. So I hire a data scientist, an awesome individual. And he starts working about, for a few months, and I start asking him questions. He's like, you know what, Todd, we don't have that data, or that data is in this system, and this data is in this system, and that's a pretty hard question to answer. So, I realized, wow. So one, I asked a few questions. It's going to take a couple months of engineering time. Then I hired a data scientist, and we need even more time. That was the ultimate, for me, moments I go back to in my head that were the inspiration for Pendo.
And of course, right now with Pendo, you're working with many of the leading SaaS companies like Zendesk and Sprinklr, to name but a few, who use Pendo to capture user behavior, simplify the product experience for users, and understand their users like never before, which ultimately leads to increased engagement and adoption. So what kind of problems do these companies come to you for help with? And are there any trends that you're noticing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the exciting things is that experience and product matters far more than it ever did, but in the past. We're seeing companies getting pressure from their users to create a better experience for them. So and it's pretty much across all industries now. The expectations we have for software, Neil, are higher than they ever have been before. Like, I already disclosed early in this interview that I've been working since the late 90s. I don't know about your background, but, back in the late 90s or early 90s, I should even say, my expectations for software were just that it worked. Yeah. But now, if the thing doesn't, if it's not personalized to what I'm looking for, if it doesn't have a companion mobile app, if it's not super slick and really easy to consume, I'm probably a little bit frustrated by it, right?
Yeah. And
I think these companies realize that it's no longer just about automating something on a computer. Now the experience has to be really, really easy and almost consumer-like. I mean, I think it's now the Googles and the Facebooks and the Airbnbs, which are kind of the leaders in helping articulate what we expect as consumers from our software. And these B2B companies like Zendesk and Sprinklr and all these other ones realize that they have to follow this trend or they're going to get left behind, or there's going to be some new vendor that's super easy to use, which captures the hearts and minds of their users. And that's essentially what Pendo solves, is we help people make sure that the experience in their software keeps up to their user expectations.
And that's a great thing, isn't it? Because I think for too long, you've got your B2C area, but the B2B area, think, well, this is business to business. It's a completely different ball game, but it's not anymore, especially with millennials entering the workforce. And they're coming with their B2C experiences and saying, well, why can't I have this same experience in the world of B2B? That's their expectation now, isn't it?
Completely, and I think there's lots of articles about millennials, but I think it's an amazing generation because it asks sometimes the unthinkable question, or maybe the question we all wanted to ask but we weren't comfortable asking. Yeah. And they have high expectations for their technology because they grew up with it. I mean, all candid, I did not grow up with it. so and as a parent now, it stresses me out how much my kids grow up with it. But the reality is, when you grow up with something, your expectations, they're all blurred. Like, why does my work software have to be so crappy? Why? They ask good questions, and I think it's driving a lot of us. And look, I'm a B2B software guy. My whole career has been B2B software. And even I now think about design and building very differently. A lens is super, super different. I think, honestly, it's made me better as a builder.
Absolutely. I mean, another thing that I've noticed, not so much now, but let's go back 2 or 3 years. In your home, you've got Amazon Alexa, you've got tablets, you've got smartphones, you can watch Netflix as you just drift seamlessly from device to device, and then you'd go into an office in a corporate environment. It'd literally be like stepping back in time 10 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, completely. I see some of the screens I use, and I was using a piece of software, and I'm not going to name names, of course, but I was just trying to add. I had a kid, and I wanted to add my kid to my insurance, which is a pretty normal thing, like having a kid or having what they call a life event. And I literally couldn't figure it out. I mean, it was a button here and a message somewhere else, and I had to pick up the phone and call a human being. And this is like, it wasn't this year, it was last year, so it's 2017, but still, I have to pick up a phone and call someone. They're like, "Oh yeah, that's a long-standing issue." You're on the phone. Like, that's the kind of stuff that that's the vision of Pendo. That's our passion. Is we want to find a way to make all software experiences amazing.
Yeah, you don't really. I don't think we take for granted a lot of the time just how much technology rules our life. But I think even earlier this year, I got off a plane in Nashville because I was attending a tech conference, and they lost my luggage, or it didn't make the connection for whatever reason. So I get in this long line to report my case missing, etc. And I get there, and a very helpful young lady there is tapping into the computer to try and find my case and where it was last seen. And she says, "Come and have a look at what's on the screen and the software that I'm using." I'm kidding you not, it was like something from 1982 DOS adventure game, Look left, open gate. It was that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it reminds me. I was trying to buy a mattress. This is about a year ago. I went in there and I picked one out, whatever, went to the cash register, and the woman's like, "I can't figure out how to sell that to you. I literally can't figure out how to use the software." So I just walked out. There's nothing else you can do. And that's an extreme example, but when the software is so hard to use that you can't take an order, that's maybe a good sign that something's broken.
Absolutely. But Pendo has recently been named a Hot 100 private software company by JMP Securities, joining 20 of your customers and many, many of the most notable names in technology. As a guy that just wanted to scratch that itch, that has got to make you feel incredibly proud of your achievement, hasn't it?
Oh, geez, Neil. It's humbling. It's hard to say too much other than, look, when you start a company, when you're trying to solve a problem, you have hopes for what it can be, but I don't think you can really sit back at that point and say, "I think this is going to happen," right? And look, I credit a lot to the amazing people that I get the pleasure to work with day in, day out. So, we have just an exceptional team, and I credit a lot to our customers. I think we've all we do is, we have a passion around serving our customers and listening to them, and I think the act of listening to them has led us to really good places. And I think if we keep hiring good people and listening to our customers, we'll continue to get good recognition and get good success. And I'm just humbled by what we've been able to accomplish so far. But we have a lot more to do. Honestly, I look back, and this is my personal 5th year anniversary will occur this October, so it'll be 5 years since I founded the company, and I feel like I'm just getting started. I walk into the office and there's like so much to do, and even though we're a 200-person company, it still feels super small to me, so I don't know. I some days I walk in and feel like we still haven't accomplished anything yet. We have a lot more work to do. So it depends on the day. But yeah, it's an amazing accomplishment. Super, super proud of the team to help us get to this achievement.
Now, like I said a few moments ago, I have been to quite a few tech conferences this year, and so far I've seen Microsoft, Adobe and IBM all say pretty much the same thing, which is experiences are the new product. When I read an article about you guys, I had to get you on today. So can you tell me more about how 80% of your consumers say they're more likely to do business with a company that offers personalised experiences?
Well, this is the major differentiator now. When we have choices between different services or different products, the one that's more personalized to us is the one they're more likely to consume, because when things are more personalized, you're going to want it to be more contextual. It's more valuable. You feel more of a connection with the service. You feel like they're frankly trying harder, right? If someone gives you, how many times do you get emails from people that says, "Hey, would you be in the market for some random service?" And you realize they haven't even looked at my LinkedIn profile to realize what is my job and what does my customer do, or what does my company do. It is so frustrating, and so if they don't just do the work, I'm far less inclined to give them my business. So I think, when I think about experience. It's like, has this company done the work? Do they care enough about me to personalize this thing for me? And if they do, I'm engaged. I'm in. I'm interested, right? And that's the way I think about it. And I think we do that. I mean, our product does that for other products, so we can help personalize your experience. But I think it's just so critically important these days.
So can you tell me more about Pendo Vox and how that's letting users launch their NPS campaign in-app or via email within minutes? But most importantly of all, it's free.
Yeah, so I got kind of on the Net Promoter Score, that's NPS, kick, about a year ago. I was at our user conference. I was hearing about people using our NPS capabilities, and honestly, we'd put it out there and we'd invested in it. We didn't quite realize how many customers were using it. And I came out of that event thinking, we got to invest more in this thing, because while it's not a perfect measure, maybe, and for those who don't know in the audience, NPS is kind of this question around 0 to 10, would you recommend this system? It's a really good proxy for customer sentiment, right? And it's a really good early indicator of renewals, revenue, again, overall customer sentiment and loyalty. And so we started investing in it. We've done a lot of innovation in it. And what I've realized is that everyone should be doing this. There should be no excuse for any company, any product, big or small, for not asking people a basic question is, would you recommend this thing? So in order to eliminate that barrier, we decided to put it out there free. And the idea being, it's a really good way to baseline your customer sentiment, to get a sense for how things are doing, and then continue to iterate from there. So yeah, Pendo Vox is, in our ways, it's something that, again, we want everyone to be using, and we've tried to create actually a really great product offering that's free to eliminate any barriers people would have had from doing it.
So what's next for you guys? Is there anything else you can share with us today?
I think, a lot, of course. I think, we're continuing to grow. I mean, I think, one of the things it's interesting for us, at least, we're continuing to move more and more up market. So we're focusing a little bit more on selling and working with enterprise customers. So that's a big push for us. And that may not be too exciting to folks out there listening, but I think the other thing that's on the docket that we're starting to plan for is international, specifically European expansion. So that's something that we have been very U.S. focused, and although we have some customers over in Europe, we there's just a huge opportunity over there that we have been not focused on as much as we should be. So I think you'll see a big push next year to go overseas, and we're really excited about that.
Excellent. Well, a huge thank you for coming on today. But before I do let you go, could you just remind the listeners of where they can find you guys online, and also contact a member of your team if they have any additional questions or around the topics we started today? Absolutely.
So you can always find us on the web at www.pendo.io. We're also, of course, on Twitter. We're at Pendo.io, all one word. And there's chat on our website. There's support as well as support at Pendo.io. So, and then myself, I'm T Olson, TOLSON, on Twitter. Feel free to follow me. Love to engage as well. Excellent. Well, like I said at the very beginning of the show today, your backstory is truly inspirational, and I love the journey that you've been on. But equally, where you are now with a Hot 100 private software company on your hand, and where you're heading to, is incredibly exciting. So I think you've got a lot of miles in your journey yet, but a big thank you for coming on today. My pleasure, Neil. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Several leading SaaS companies such as Zendesk, LexisNexis and Sprinklr are all using Pendo to capture user behaviour, simplify product experience and understand their users like never before, which ultimately leads to increased engagement and adoption. And I think it was so great to hear Todd's personal and inspirational startup story. And I hope that it will inspire other tech founders listening to the show today, and how the inspiration for Pendo came to Todd from his past experience. Because that's what this life is all about, isn't it? And wanting to scratch that itch.
And I think if we all look back and join up the dots, we are all influenced by our past experience. And sometimes it even feels like the universe gives us that little nudge in the right direction. And we've now interviewed over 600 tech leaders on this show. But I'm also passionate about wanting to get your story out there too. Because I know that you're listening to me every single day. And I know this because I get stat reports each month of growing figures. And I also know that you're listening in 165 different countries. And although some of you will speak English, many of you won't. But I don't want that to put you off. I want you to reach out to me and share your story. What you've learned from today's show or any of the guests on this podcast. And I know podcasts are meant to be for passive listening and people don't really want to contact a host. But my philosophy has always been rules are for fools. Tear up that rule book. So why not say a quick hello via email at techblogwriter@outlook.com. Tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. Or if you go to techblogwriter.co.uk/podcast, you've got access to all the guests and you can also leave me a virtual voicemail. So I want to hear more about who you are, where you listen and what you like and what you don't like about this show. Or even just answer your questions. And indeed, anything at all. I'm an open book, so come on in, the water is fine. And on that note, I've recorded 10 podcasts this week, written 10,000 words. So I'm now going to kick back and relax with a few video games. Because hey, I'm a big kid at heart. So a genuine thank you for tuning in to me today. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.